What is up, Maniacs? My name is Zach, and I am the Milly Maker Maniac. Welcome to our Week 14 prep video. We are combining our game-by-game breakdown and our player pool video into one this week, as I was traveling and didn't have the opportunity to do two videos this week for prep. So we're just going to get one. We'll jump through here. We'll start with the first game, Seattle and Atlanta. Pretty big advantage for Seattle here across the board. And it's looking real rough for Atlanta. Not too bad in the run game. So really this is either you're playing Bijan, maybe Kyle Pitts, but for the most part I'm not touching this game or the Falcons at all. I do have some interest in Bijan just because in any matchup he can go off. So we never want to X him out of our player pool because of that. But it's not like a great spot for him by any means. On the Seattle side, it does look like a pretty solid matchup for Sam Darnold, and a really solid one for the run game as well. Tough with it being a split there in the backfield on really picking the right guy for DFS purposes. And most weeks there's just not going to be a guy for DFS purposes because nobody's going to 4X their salary when they're not getting the enough touches to do so. It's possible, but unlikely. So we can look at it a little bit, but because of the how split it is down the middle, it's unlikely that they put up a tournament winning score. We can quickly look at pricing over here. Let's go to Seattle and Dallas. It's got JSN. Let's go here. Sorry, we'll just do Seattle. Darnold, 5,500. Not a bad price, something we can consider. Yeah, Walker and Charbonnet are just too expensive for the split, even with a good matchup. It's just hard to see either one hitting that like 25-point ceiling. Like you can see either one of them getting a 15, which would be okay and usable, but not a tournament winning score. So I'm out in the backfield there. JSN, pretty much I'm just going to do him with Darnold this week. He did have one down week last week, but I mean, he has been killing it, but he needs to have like a 40-point game to pay off this price, which he's definitely capable of. But yeah, to really 4X is tough at that price. He's only done it once where he's got true 4X what his salary is right now. So 36 or higher, just the 140-point game. He's definitely capable of it, and when you're getting this range, like you can use a 30 spot, like 30 spots still could separate him from the rest of the field. So it doesn't necessarily have to be 4X to be usable. If we look at something around 30, he's done that a few more times. So we can mix him in a little bit more than just with Darnold, but the majority of the lineups I have him in will be with Darnold. Shaheed hasn't done anything yet there. Starting to get a price where we can still mix it in here and there because he can get a big play out of nowhere and pay off his price. He can put up like a 16 spot in 4X with just a couple plays. So that's interesting. Cup, I just don't really see the upside. I don't really see him ever getting 15 anymore these days. So yeah, probably pass on Cup. Be more Shaheed would, I think, more likely to have the big play. Barner's definitely in play. We can have him in the player pool for sure. With these target numbers, he definitely can get to that 15, which would be 5X's his salary. So we can definitely have that in play. If he scores, that will work. Love Seahawks D, but at 4K, it's going to be hard to get to. I think there's better options. On the Atlanta side, I'm assuming that London is out. If he is, then I'll have zero Cousins. Bijan, I will mix in probably a little bit above the field. Somewhere around like 15%-ish is my game plan with Bijan. Like I said, it doesn't matter the matchup. He's a player that can go off any week, so I'll never X him out of my player pool, but it's definitely not like a huge play this week like it was last week. If London plays, I would mix him in a little bit, probably around the 10% range, but I don't think he's going to play. Mooney hasn't shown anything. Sills hasn't shown anything. Sills did score a touchdown last week, I guess. Yeah, but only 4 targets and still only 9.5. So I don't really want to go there. He also dropped a pass at the end of the game that would have put him in field goal range, and they probably would have won that game. But yeah, so big drop. Mooney just hasn't shown anything. Don't even know any of these other guys. So we'll stay out of that. Pitts at 4,200 is a little high for me. If he was like 3,500, I'd have interest, but at 4,200, I just think it's just a little too high. And probably not going to get to see Atlanta's defense. All right, let's move on over here Next game we have is Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Pretty much I'm just fading this game. Henry is somewhat of a possibility over here with a neutral to slightly good matchup against the run game. Last week, what the Bills were doing against Pittsburgh, they run that outside zone, but Cook would kind of like pinch it towards the middle, and their linebacking core kept sucking in, and then he would do that jump cut and get to the outside, and he just ran around them. I don't know that Derrick Henry has that same lateral movement that Cook does, so I don't think it's going to be similar to last week. Everybody's kind of just leaning back on how James Cook had a big week against Pittsburgh last week and assuming that that'll be the same for Derrick Henry. I think he has lost a little bit, like half a step. I mean, he's still very much a solid player, but I don't know that he's necessarily a game-breaking player as much anymore. And I really don't think he has the lateral quickness to create that mismatch that we saw last week. He's going to have to run over guys, which he can do more, but that sets up better for these Pittsburgh linebackers that are much more downhill and not nearly as successful from a lateral standpoint. And Lamar has just played poorly. Now, obviously, he is a Hall of Fame player, one of, multiple-time MVP, one of the best quarterbacks of all time. So we never want to count him out, but there is an element where a lot of people are speculating that he's playing injured. He definitely doesn't look as explosive or willing to run right now. But that being said, they're playing Pittsburgh, who has not been playing well recently, and it's Lamar Jackson. So I'm not going to completely play no Lamar Jackson, but I'm not like believing in it. I'm just going to lean on his history of being a great player and not eliminate the possibility that he has a vintage weekend, but I'm probably not going to get more than, 5 to 8%, somewhere in that ballpark is where I want to be on Lamar at 6,700. Henry, I'll probably be in that 5 to 10% range as well. I think the field's going to be much higher than that on him. I think he'll probably be around 25% owned just because a lot of people are leaning on Pittsburgh struggling last week. But as I explained, I don't think that matchup is the same for Henry. Yeah, I'm not going to completely eliminate the possibility. Derrick Henry, as the year gets going, tends to have more success later in the year. So it's definitely possible. We don't want to completely eliminate that possibility, but I think he has lost a little bit of a step, and I think the matchup isn't as good as what people think it is. Not really interested in any of the receivers. Bateman hasn't done anything. Zay did have that big touchdown play get called back last week, so that changes his numbers there, but really just hovering around 10 points. Getting around 24, we've only seen one time all season, so not a lot of reasons to believe that he's going to be a good play this week. Mark Andrews just signed the big contract this week, which is kind of weird, or not. I don't know if weird is the right way to say it, but it was not what people were anticipating. I think people were anticipating them going separate ways after this year at his age, but they extended him for 3 years, so he's definitely going to be around. I think that they could probably have similar target numbers. I don't think it really changes anything about how they used him throughout the year. It just gives him a little bit more security to maybe play more freely, which could be a positive. But this isn't like a smash spot for him in my mind. Definitely want to mix him in a player pool, 10, 15%, somewhere in that range, but not like a big smash. And likely had a fumble at the goal line last week that would have changed his numbers even more, but was very involved. So we definitely could mix him in at 3,100 as well. These are definitely my two favorite stacking partners with Lamar for sure. On the Pittsburgh side, I'm really not going to touch anything over here. Rodgers 5,100. I don't see him getting to 25 or 20, even 20 for that matter. These guys are splitting the backfield too much for me to see either one of them getting to 25, and Baltimore's defense has been playing at a much higher level in recent weeks. And this receiving room just hasn't done anything. DK could get to 25, but I mean, he's done it once this year. We know historically, though, he's been able to do it. So maybe it happens. Baltimore doesn't have a great pass rush, so you could get Rodgers a little bit more time, but it just doesn't seem like he wants to let plays develop to get the ball down the field. Metcalf, we can mix in a little bit, maybe like 5% or so. Yeah, and the tight end's just too spread out. Can't go there either. I do actually like Pittsburgh's defense. We know Lamar has had a tendency to turn the ball over and do dumb things in stressful situations. So I want to lean into that a little bit. And on the sheet, we'll see that in the pass rush for Pittsburgh has a pretty big advantage. So real solid defensive advantage across the board, according to the grades. So want to lean into that at that price. They're my favorite discount defense this week. Let's move on to our next game. Cleveland and Tennessee. I'll probably play a couple Shedeur stacks. Interestingly, it doesn't look like a good spot for Judkins either. I think we probably see like 2 touchdowns in this game. I could see Shedeur throwing a couple TDs, but if it's like they get around like the 5-yard line or something like that, I think they're just going to run the ball in. I don't think they want to let Shedeur operate in the red zone for whatever reason. They just want to run that wildcat out of there. So you could see Judkins getting in, but I think it's actually pretty unlikely that he breaks 100 yards. And so if he just gets 1 touchdown, he's not going to be a guy that you have to have there. So I'll do a couple Shedeur lineups, and I'll mix in a little bit of Harold Fannin as well. Actually, probably a good chunk of Harold Fannin, but just do Cleveland first. Shedeur 4,400. Yeah, like I said, I'll probably do somewhere, if I'm doing a full 150 lineups in a tournament, I'd probably build like 5 with Shedeur in that range. Quinshon, probably somewhere between 5 and 10%. There's a little bit of upside, but I think it's pretty unlikely he gets to 100 yards. So even if he just gets a touchdown with his lack of passing game contributions, he's not likely to be needed in a tournament. So I don't want to be too heavy there. I'll actually be closer to like 5%. Fannin, though, at his price, the targets he's getting week in and week out, he's paying off that price a lot. He can get to 12 pretty easily, been to 18, 15. All those pay off at that price very well. So we will mix that in quite a bit. I'll probably be around 20, 25% Fannin in my lineups. I think in a lot of my lineups this week, I'll be paying up at running back and in the mid to upper tier at quarterback as well. So I'll be paying down at receiver and tight end to get those lineups to fit. And then I love their defense at 3,700 against Cam Ward. You could legitimately see Myles Garrett get 4 sacks in this game to get the season sack record. Could definitely see that as a possibility. So yeah, love Cleveland's D. Obviously more expensive than they have been in previous weeks, but I think that they will tear up Tennessee. I don't want anything from Tennessee, so we don't even need to look at it. The defense actually is the only thing you could consider, but I like the Steelers better in that range than I do the Titans. Yeah, nothing here for me. I am out on Tennessee. All right, this next game, we got Indianapolis and Jacksonville, a game with a ton of playoff implications. Will be very much like a playoff environment. Looks like a pretty neutral matchup for the passing game in Indianapolis. We do have Daniel Jones playing on the broken leg. He played pretty well last week, but I think it does definitely limit his upside. So I'm not really going to be playing any Daniel Jones this week. What I anticipate that the Colts are going to do is they're going to lean on the run game. They have throughout the year basically passed early and then ran the ball late, got ahead through the pass game. But it seems like teams have caught on to that. I expect Steichen to make the adjustment. He seems like a coach that is willing to make an adjustment. And yeah, and I think they're just going to lean into the run game early and often. Jonathan Taylor is very expensive this week, and I don't think he's going to be too owned because of that price, but I will get to him a little bit, which is a little bit out of what I normally would do for big pay-up running backs, but I just do see like the possibility for a 40-point game for Jonathan Taylor. I could see them giving him like 30 carries or 30 touches. He could get a few in the passing game as well to take pressure off Daniel Jones and to really lean into what they've been good at all year early in the game rather than trying to use it to run down the clock as they have done in previous weeks. I think they'll just lean into it right out of the gates. On the Jacksonville side, it actually looks like a pretty solid advantage for Trevor Lawrence and pass catchers. Normally, I'm not really going to be super into Trevor Lawrence, but this is a good spot, it looks like, for him. And he's found a guy he can rely on. 2 guys, really. with Jacoby Myers coming in and then Brenton Strange coming back. Like those are the types of throws that he likes to make, shorter over the middle of the field. And I think they're just going to lean into that. It could open up for some stuff for BTJ over the top, but I really think that they're using BTJ more as like a sacrificial X receiver right now because of his lack of willingness to go over the middle of the field. And he also appears to maybe have been playing hurt. So it doesn't seem like BTJ is a big part of the plans right now. I'm going to lean more into that Trevor Lawrence, Brenton Strange, and Jacoby Myers connection that seems to be growing. So that'll be how I stack that. And it looks like a good spot for the run game. They have been splitting the carries. I actually think I like Tootin more than ETN this week because of price and because he has been getting the ball in the red zone. Let's go ahead and start with the Jags over here at pricing. Trevor Lawrence at a very attractive 5,400. ETN at 6,300. It's hard to see him. He needs to get to 24 for that. He could definitely 3x that quite a bit, but we've only seen him, get to 24, 25 a couple times, and it was two of them were earlier in the year. Tootin's just been getting all the goal line work, so it feels hard to me to get. It seems like it would be hard for ETN to get to 25 with the current circumstances. Tootin, I think, has more upside. I think that his bigger scores are coming, and ETN's are probably behind him, is my guess. So I'm going to lean into Tootin at this price. I think he could get to 25 just as easily as ETN, and at his price, it's a lot more valuable. So I'll lean into Tootin a little bit, somewhere around 10%. I don't want to go crazy on it because it is still pretty low likelihood, but it's a good spot. And if the game falls the right way, we could definitely see Tootin in the end zone 2 times. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities. So I want to lean into that a little bit. And I'll probably be probably 3 to 5% on ETN too. I don't want to completely X him out of my player pool. I'll mix him in a little bit because 25 is still a really good score at 6,300. And I think that's still in the range of possibilities. I just think it's more likely for Tootin than it is for ETN. And Tootin has a better price. Actually, we got to stay here at Jacksonville, move on to wide receivers. Brian Thomas at 5,900. It is crazy to see him at that price coming off of a 1,300-yard season last year. But to me, it's still fool's gold. It's going to continue to go down. So as you hear me say that, you should be loading up on Brian Thomas Jr. because you know how my predictions at receiver have been going lately. So you know what to do. I'm not playing BTJ. You know what to do. I'm going to be playing Jacoby Myers, though. Since joining Jacksonville, it just got steadily better week in and week out. The targets have been steady. But, I just feel like he does this crazy thing where if you throw it to him in his vicinity, he catches it. And the rest of the receivers on Jacksonville have not done that year-round. And I have the feeling that Trevor Lawrence doesn't love making good throws to guys that aren't going to catch it. So he's probably just going to continue to lean into throwing the ball to Jacoby Myers because he catches it when he throws it to him. I know it's a novel concept, but that's what I think is going to happen. I think he's going to continue to pepper Myers and Strange with targets. As Strange, you can see since he's been back, 5 targets and 4 targets, 13.5 and 14.3. Those are solid at his price. We will take those scores all day. And I think there's more upside in this big game. I think Lawrence is going to rely on these big guys, his go-to guys in big moments because he knows he can trust them. Defense at 2,700, not the worst play, honestly. You could see Daniel Jones in these moments have some turnovers. He's done it historically. Doesn't mean that he will. I could see him also coming out and just because he's got so much of a better environment around him, being successful in these environments. I don't think he has to do it all on his own, and he's leaned into that a little bit more this year. But it's still a possibility of him having one of those games that he's had in the past where he's imploded. But at 6,200, I just think there's better options, so I'm going to be passing this week. Jonathan Taylor, 9,300. I will lean into it a little bit. Not crazy, probably around 10%, which I believe will be about double the field at this price. But, I'm not going to completely ignore it at that price like I normally would. Most of the time at 9,300, I'm not going to touch it. But this week, I just think that there is that offensive player of the year moment type game where he comes out in a big game and puts up a 3-touchdown game like he's done many times this season, but just kind of puts the team on his back and gets the momentum back that they haven't had in recent weeks. I could definitely see that happening. At receiver, my favorite in this group is Pierce, but Pittman is not a bad price either. He's had plenty of 20-point games, and at his price, that would work just fine for us. Obviously, coming off a couple duds, but Houston's defense and Kansas City's defense are both really solid. So Pittman at 5,400, I actually want to get to that a good amount. Pierce, I definitely want to get to. He's been coming on in recent weeks. And you can see these target numbers have been really solid throughout the year. So I like Pierce at 5,100 is a great bargain. And Josh Downs, I would mix in if I were going to play Jones. The more I'm looking at this, the more I'm actually opening up to playing Jones. It does just feel like these guys are good values. And this matchup it's not great, but it's better than their two most recent games. It is in Jacksonville, so that's something to consider. If it was in the Dome, I'd feel a lot better about these receivers. There is supposed to be light rain. Early in the week, they were thinking it was going to be heavy rain, but what I saw most recently is going to be light rain. So I don't know that it would really impact much in the receiving game. I might mix in a little bit more Jones. Maybe I'll get to 5% as Jones and mix in these receivers. I really do like Pittman and Pierce as good values and guys that are likely to 4x their salary. Tyler Warren, it looks like a good matchup. It is a good matchup. Big game, too. I think that this could be a coming-of-age type moment for Tyler Warren where he moves from just being the rookie to be like one of the dudes that you can count on in big moments. I think that is the type of career that he is likely to have, and I think this could be one of those weeks where he starts to establish that as kind of his legacy. These big games, they carry different weight, and in those moments, I think that teams go to their go-to guys more. They just want to lean on those guys that they know that they can count on. And I think Warren is definitely one of those guys and will continue to grow into that role. So this could be a big game for Warren. I think 25 is definitely in his range. So he's a tight end that has the potential of putting up like a separating score. 25 at tight end in many weeks can be 10 points above second place. Like there's many weeks that first, like the best tight end is around 15 points. But some weeks it'll be one tight end's at, we've had the McBride weeks where he's been around 30 and everybody else has been around 15. And so that gap makes a huge difference. Warren, I think, could be a guy that creates that gap. So we'll have to mix around with when we're paying up a running back, how are we going to find ways to get Warren into our lineup as well? So we'll need to find some good punt wide receivers. Colts D at 3,200, it's a little too high for me. Lawrence definitely could turn the ball over in a big game. We've seen him do that quite a bit. But to me, honestly, Lawrence has been trending in the right direction this year. He's had some bad turnovers for sure. But I think it looks a lot different if there weren't so many key drops that he's experienced this year. I think his stats would look a lot different. So, yeah, I think there's potential for both teams. I like this game to have 2 or 3 pieces come out of it that are very important to win a DFS tournament. Let's move on to Minnesota and Washington. This is a sneaky game to me. I like, crazy to say, but I like 9 this week. I like Jonathan James McCarthy to do a little something this week. If he's not going to do it this week, he's never going to do it. But this Washington defense has been pretty bad throughout the year. They've been better in recent weeks, but with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, like they're going to be open. That you've got to be able to find a way to get them the ball at least a couple times. So McCarthy, we can mix in a little bit, but I'm not gonna go as crazy as I did a few weeks ago against the Bears. But I'll probably be about 10 to 15% both on Jefferson and Addison, and then probably around 5% with McCarthy, despite him just looking awful. I think there is some potential. So yeah, we have a solid advantage, especially in the receivers versus the secondary and coverage there. So big advantage there. It's just a matter of whether or not McCarthy can hit them the ball. So far, we've seen that he can't, but with a solid pass blocking advantage, and these guys should just be wide ass open, you'd think that he can make some of these throws. Like he didn't become a first round pick by not being able to make basic throws with time. And I think he's going to get a lot more of those opportunities this week than what he's had in previous weeks. So I'm not going to count the kid out completely. I don't think that he is him or I don't think he's going to have a long career in the NFL, but I do think this could be a week that we could see a little bit of the upside that led to him being drafted in the first round. So I'm not going to give up on the kid completely for this week. The running back, if Jones is playing, which it's turning towards him playing, I think it's hard to get to either guy. We'll look at pricing here in a second. We see a disadvantage for both defenses over here. And when we get over to Washington, we're getting Jaden Daniels back. He will be my highest owned quarterback for sure. I guess I said he's coming back. We don't know that for sure yet, but he did practice in full on Thursday. I'm recording this on Friday, so I'm not 100% sure if he's practiced today or not, but everything is trending towards him playing, and he's going to be playing with like his full complement of receivers for the first time really this year, with Terry McLaurin coming back and looking healthy last week, and Debo being, I think, what health on some of the healthiest he's been all year. So it just looks like a good spot for Jaden Daniels to just go off. Their run game does not have an advantage here, and they really don't have like a go-to guy. To me, it just looks like a Jaden Daniels like 2024 type outbreak. I think he could have like a 30-plus point game and bring some guys along with him. So let's jump over here and look at this game. Let's start on the Minnesota side first. Let's get our 9 stuff out of the way. 4,700. With his running ability, like, yeah, it's been rough, but with his running ability and how open I think these receivers are going to be, he could put up 25. It's possible. It's very possible. So, yeah, we'll mix that in, probably around 10%. I don't want to go crazy with it by any means, but I want to be above the field. I do think that there is a lot more possibility here than what people are thinking. Also, there's a lot of bad weather this week. It's getting into that, December playoff mode football type of point of the year, and that tends to slow games down. You tend to see fewer offensive explosions, and there's a lot of those like cold game environments that it turns into more of that slower run-focused game, not turning the ball over, not making mistakes type environment rather than being aggressive, moving the ball down the field. It's just harder to do in those windy and cold conditions. All that being said, this game is in a dome, so I like leaning into that environment in a week where we're expecting a lot of games to be cold, windy, and rainy and snowy in some environments as well. So definitely interested in a lot of this game. Mason and Jones, I might need to mix them in a little bit. I would probably lean. He's getting so much receiving work, it's hard to say, really. I would probably lean Mason. I just think he's got more touchdown equity, but he's got 5 on the year, just 2 for Jones, but in fewer games. I don't know, under 5% for sure for both, but maybe not completely out of the player pool. And then at receiver, Jefferson and Addison, great values. Jefferson under 7K, like I don't think we've seen that since his rookie year. Addison, if he gets that big play, and 10 targets last week, like those are going to turn into points at some point. Like he's getting these targets, they're going to turn to points at some point. He's one of my favorite receivers this week at 4,900. Don't let me down again, McCarthy. Like they're so good at receiver that just all we got to do is get them the ball. I think that the lack of pass rush for Washington should be enough of a difference maker to allow McCarthy to get a few balls on target. There's also going to be an intensity from his standpoint. Whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing for him, I guess we'll find out. But he has to have an understanding that he is playing for his career right now. If he continues to bomb week in and week out, they're going to move on from him this year. Like they've seen enough that he just doesn't have it, that really he's playing for his career right now, and he has to have that understanding. So we'll see if that helps him get laser focused in, or if that pressure actually creates more bad play. We'll see how it plays out. I'll play into 10%-ish on him at quarterback in my lineups that he can show out and show why he was drafted in that range. And I'll lean into it a little bit more at the receiver just because it only takes 1 or 2 throws for them to pay off their price, because they're both capable of having really big plays. So because of that, I'll probably be around 20 to 25% on both of these guys, Jefferson and Addison. Hawkinson at 3,300 is okay, been more involved in recent weeks. Good matchup. It's not awful. You could see him get into 15. That's not out of the realm of possibilities. So we can mix him in, probably around 10%. And I'm not too interested in Minnesota's D. I think I'd rather have Pittsburgh in that range. And then Washington, yeah, Jaden Daniels is 6K. Like, that is way too cheap. Like, we haven't really seen it this year. I mean, these are all solid scores, and these are all scores that are okay for us at 6K. We'll take all of those. But he's got that 30-point upside, and this is a juicy matchup for them. Not going to touch the running backs. If I were to, it would just be Rodriguez because I think he's got the most touchdown upside, but I don't think it's likely that we see a stud come out of this backfield. I don't think we see 15 plus, really. I think that's unlikely we see out of that backfield. But at receiver, yeah, give me Terry and give me Debo. Interesting here, we're seeing that they haven't given up many points, fantasy points, but when we go over to our chart here, we see that Washington has a massive pass game advantage, which is interesting to me, the discrepancy there. I guess that's maybe a scheme thing, just in general, where they're not giving up touchdowns, but they're giving up yardage through the pass game. Maybe something along those lines. I need to dig into that a little bit more, but intriguing to see that dichotomy there. I'm going to lean into seeing the grade difference and lean into this team being healthy and Jaden Daniels being what I think is an elite quarterback. He's just been banged up and hasn't had his weapons around him this year. I expect that we see him healthy. If he's back, he's fully healthy. They're not going to take any chances with him. So he's going to come back, be fully healthy, and he's going to have the full array of weapons that they thought they were going to have coming into the year. And I think that they're going to have a good day. Zach Ertz, little high for me at 4,500, but he'll definitely be in some of my lineups. Obviously, he 4X'd that last week, so it's definitely in the range of possibilities. So probably 15-ish% Ertz at tight end for me. Commanders aren't an awful one to go with, actually, with McCarthy. Like, all the things I said about him, he can definitely throw a lot of interceptions, and he's not out of the realm of possibilities to see a pick six. So I'll actually mix in the Commanders at 2,800 as well. Now let's move on to our next game. Let's go over to Jets and Dolphins. It's decent advantage in the passing game for the Jets, and okay at running back. So we'll mix in the Jets a little bit here. The Dolphins have been playing better defense in recent weeks. Actually, both these teams have just been playing better in general. Two of the teams that are actually won the most games in the last 5 weeks, which is interesting. And then on the Miami side, it looks like a decent advantage in the passing game and a neutral advantage in the run game. Achan's going to be super popular this week. It's not a huge advantage for them this week, but it hasn't been an advantage for them all year long because their offensive line hasn't been great, but Mike McDaniels has schemed around that. If they get an offensive line next year, they're going to be dangerous, especially if they make a change at quarterback. We'll see what they do there. But their O-line has just been horrific this year, but McDaniels has been able to scheme around it enough to have some success. And I do think that they are planning on retaining him. So it'll be interesting to see what they do next year. But all that being said, I like both Miami and Jet stacks this week across the board. So let's check out this game. Start on the Miami side. Got Tua at 5,200. Definitely in play. Achan, probably be about 20%, which I think will be maybe a little under what the field will be on him. And then at wide receiver, pretty much just Waddle. Like, we'll mix that in. Probably be 15%-ish Waddle. Interesting when I think about it with, we just talked about Jefferson only being 100 more than Waddle. Yeah, I'd like Jefferson more in that range. Like, Jefferson is just too good to not have a breakout game despite how bad McCarthy's been. Like, McCarthy can make a few throws, and I think Waddle has it's a much tougher matchup. And yeah, the targets haven't been turning into great scores in recent weeks. That being said, like, he can get to 20 pretty easily. So he can 3X this, but 4Xing it is pretty unlikely. Where with Jefferson, I think there is more of a possibility of 4X. So Waddle is solid, but I like Jefferson more in that range. So probably about 10% Waddle. Waller, we can mix in at 3,800 as well. Last time he played the Jets, put up a 17 spot, so that would definitely pay off his price. So he's a good value as well, probably in that 10% range with him as well. Probably don't want to mess with the Jets D. Think there's better options. And let's go over the Jets. Tyrod at 4,900. He paid off that price last week, or he 4x'd. Good matchup here against Miami. Like, their secondary has actually played much better than people were anticipating this year. They've graded pretty well, but there's still a slight advantage showing in the grades. Breece Hall at 6,500. It's not the best matchup, but it's definitely not a bad one, and he has been getting the vast amounts of workload. So, yeah, we want Breece Hall, probably around 15, maybe to 20% Breece Hall, like that. And then Adonai Mitchell, $1,000 more this week. He's got upside, and they're gonna feed him targets. So yeah, 4,600. Like we got to mix that in for sure. He's got to be one of our solid plays. Anything I need to move him over in the player pool. But yeah, Mechie, I think has much less upside. He's going to be getting targets, but I think this 18.5 really is his ceiling, which is still solid for him at 4,500. So we can mix him in as well. But I like Mitchell more. Taylor, we just haven't seen it from. Probably not going to go there this week with so many other guys in that range that I like. Jets at 2,500 aren't the worst. I like the Steelers better at 2,600 though. So out of this game, Mitchell, Hall, I like the most. And then on the Miami side, Achane is really the guy out of that game. Waddle a little bit, but primarily Achane and a little Waller too. All right, moving on to Tampa Bay and New Orleans. Go through this one quickly. I don't see anything here that I really love, but it's an okay advantage for Tampa Bay in the passing game and about neutral in the run game. I do like Bucky out of this game, probably about 15% Bucky. Beyond that, I'm probably not going to get to too much. Mayfield at 5,800, a decent price, 5% or so. We'll build a few lineups with him, but not a smash spot by any means. Bucky at 7K, I'll probably be around 15% Bucky. Had 16 last week, but these 30-spot games are definitely in range. And as they're making that playoff push, like they need to win this game. Carolina is right there on their heels. I think they're going to rely on Bucky. You could see last week, like as you could see, he was healthy. They were like, yeah, we want more of this. They trust him with the ball. He creates more than any of their other running backs do. Yeah, they're going to lean into that. So Bucky is definitely capable of getting to a 28 spot and 4xing that price. We definitely want to get to Bucky. About 15% will be the range that I'll be in. Egbuka is an okay value at 6,300, but he hasn't paid off that price in a long time. Week 10 was the last time. And then before that was week 5. So really week 10 was one outlier over the last 6 weeks. But I don't think we're going to see Evans in this game. See, I don't think he was limited. I don't think we'll see him this week. I think it'll be the following week. They should be able to win this game without him. I think they're just trying to get him ready for the following week. If he does play, I would have some interest in it, actually, of Evans at 6K. And I think that actually makes Egbuka better as well. Godwin is probably the most attractive to me this week if Evans doesn't play at 5,300. He looked more explosive over the last 2 weeks. People are saying drop a touchdown pass, but it was a tight window throw. Anyways, if he scores there, then we're looking at him 4x in his price, getting close to 20 points there. So I could see him getting to that 20-point range and paying off his price at 5,300. I don't mind mixing him in more than the other guys. On at 3,600, probably not going there this week with Godwin being back and healthy. I'm probably not going to get there. Johnson at 3,700. I had 2 targets last week. Maybe Ty Johnson, but he's an okay punt play. Now I got to play Bucks D. I'll play a little bit of Shuck just because his price at 4,600, and obviously you can stack it with Olave or Vele. I was a little bit on Tipton last week, but Vele was where we wanted to go. Had the big day. We just didn't get there, unfortunately. We had a little bit of Tipton. We can still mix him in at the min price. with 4 targets at min price. We'll take that if he's got that in both of the last 2 weeks. So 4 targets at 3K, that could easily pay off and get to 12 spot if he scores, which is possible on 4 targets. So we'll mix him in a little bit. Vele, we can go back to at 3,700 for sure. He should definitely be actually a core punt play for us. And Olave, expecting he's going to play. Yeah, he'll play. And we can expect him to be the 6,500. It's a little bit harder for him to 4X, but he's pretty reliable to be at least 15. At 15, he doesn't hurt us there, and he's got some upside. So he's a guy that we can rely on to not kill lineups when he doesn't hit, but he has the upside to pay off and get around that 25 range. So Olave is a guy that I like to mix in this week. And then a tight end, probably not going to get too much Juwan at his price this week. I don't want to mess with Taysom either. Yeah. So primarily Bucky out of this game. All right, the next game is one of our favorites. This is Cincinnati and Buffalo. This is going to be a fun game. Massive advantage for Buffalo across the board, both at running back, massively at running back, and in the passing game as well. And then Cincinnati doesn't look like a massive advantage, but they have Joe Burrow back, and it's looking like T. Higgins is going to play. And this is, if Cincinnati wins this game, I honestly would say that they are going to be in the driver's seat for the division with the way their schedule lays out, which is crazy to say, but that'd be a lot of fun down the stretch. But I think that this is going to be like a playoff game. Both teams need this for positioning, and really to just stay in the playoff picture for Cincinnati. So this is going to have a massive playoff environment with a lot of big name players that are at decent prices. So I'm going to stack this game a ton. Field probably will as well. We look at the over-under on this. Yeah, it's set at 53.5. So the field should be all over this game. They probably won't be as much as it should be just because of how all these guys are priced up. It's hard to really go heavy on all of them. So it's going to kind of space out their ownership. I think a lot of them will probably be around 20%, but nobody's going to be massively owned. Let's start on the Cincinnati side. So Burrow at 6,500. Like that a lot. Yeah, Burrow, we've seen plenty 35-point games from Burrow. He can 4X that, no problem. I like Chase Brown at 6,700. Been really solid since week 8. All these scores would be fine. They don't kill us. And then I think there's upside for him to eventually get to that 30-point game. It's a whole different ball game when Burrow is in there. And then Jamar at 8,200. I want that over JSN this week at 9K. I'd much rather have 8,200 Jamar Chase. 40 spot from him seems honestly almost probable in this environment. In Buffalo, potential of light snow. Yeah, it just seems like an epic game waiting to happen. And T. Higgins at 6,200, he'll be one of my heaviest rostered wide receivers at 6,200. It's looking like he's going to play. He practiced in full on Thursday. We'll see if he practices today. But if he practices today, he should clear concussion protocol. And then it's back to the glory days of 2024. We got Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. Stack that up all day. We can mix in Chase Brown into that. We can mix in Gesicki into that as well. But we just stack up this Bengals team and let them go to work. It's pretty concentrated too because you got Brown, 2 receivers, and Gesicki's really only a tight end. But really it's the big 3 with Chase, Higgins, and Brown with Burrow, and even without Burrow. I would definitely like doing lineups with, if we were playing Josh Allen lineups, you can do all those same stacks, but just have Josh Allen as the quarterback where we're playing out a scenario in which he goes hero mode, which is definitely in play. The Cincinnati secondary actually is not horrific. A couple of their corners are pretty solid. And obviously we know this Buffalo wide receiving core isn't great. If Josh Allen has a big day, I think a lot of it's going to be the tight end and running the football. And then maybe like these broken plays where he gets the big plays against Cincinnati. So if I'm playing him, I'm probably not going to be stacking him with anybody besides Kincaid if Kincaid plays. I expect that he does here. Let's see if he Yeah, we'll see what he does in practice today. I think he's going to play. If he doesn't, then I do like Knox a lot at 2,800. I would probably have like 15 to 20% Knox at 2,800. But if Kincaid plays, I'd probably be about 25% Kincaid. Just because against Cincinnati, who do we target? We target the running back and we target tight ends. They are just awful against running backs and tight ends. We can see 32nd and 32nd bears that out. And James Cook, I'm probably going to have 70% James Cook. He's going to be my highest rostered player this week. I think because Cincinnati's secondary isn't awful, I would say probably average to slightly above average, but the rest of their defense, the middle of their defense is horrific. I think that matching up with Buffalo's receivers not being great, that Joe Brady's just going to see that and be like, okay, it's a James Cook game. We're going to lean on him like we did last week. That's why we paid this guy. We are going to lean into the advantage that we have into this game and get one step closer to getting into the playoffs and getting that Super Bowl. That is what they are focused on. They're not going to be messing around with it. I think they're just going to feed Cook and feed him all day long. A 40-point game from Cook would not surprise me. It would surprise me if he scores less than 20. I'd be much more surprised by that. So I think he's a lock to score 20 points. I think it's very unlikely that he kills our lineup. Even at 70%, if he scores 20, he doesn't like kill our day. Like we can still have a profitable day and doesn't necessarily take us out of the running to win the Milly Maker. But he has massive upside in this game. So Cook and Kincaid is really where I would lean into if Kincaid's healthy. I will build some Josh Allen lineups. There's plenty of game scripts where it's going back and forth in the fourth quarter and they have to abandon the run game a little bit. If Cincinnati gets out to a lead and Buffalo has to be in comeback mode, late in the game, they'll have to abandon the run at some point, and you could see a Josh Allen having a big game in that environment. So I will build some Allen stacks, but all of those Allen stacks are going to be either with Kincaid or naked, and it'll be with a lot of Bengals in there. Brown and Chase, Brown and Higgins, Higgins and Chase. With Allen, I like that a lot. I like this game to live up to that 53.5 total and be an epic game going back and forth. Let's lean into that and build a lot of game stacks out of that game. All right, my friends, 3 more games to go. And then we can quickly run through our player pool. But our next game is Denver and Vegas. Obviously, massive advantage for Denver. I'm not playing any Raiders, except maybe a little Bowers, but I actually won't. I'll probably 5% Bowers is probably what I'll play. I just think this is a bad matchup for him, and I think it's unlikely for him to pay off that price. Denver has played down to their competition throughout the year, so even though they have this massive advantage across the board, it's not gonna be a crazy smash spot for me. I'll probably have like 10% Bo Nix, somewhere in that ballpark, and I'll lean into RJ Harvey a little bit. But with Sean Payton, like you never know who's really going to be getting those touches, so it's hard to lean into any Broncos running back or receiver for that matter. But Nix has played down to his competition quite a bit, but he has had big games in some good matchups against Cincinnati. But the Jets were awful at that time, only put 13-4, 25 against Dallas. Yeah, last time they played Vegas was only 7.5, and then Kansas City 12.6. So bust is definitely a possibility, but at 6,100, he can definitely 4x that pretty easily. So 10 to 15% Knicks. Harvey, I like the most out of this backfield, 5,700. I'll probably be around 10 to 15% Harvey. I would love to lean into it more if I knew that these guys, McLaughlin and Batty, wouldn't steal too much, but I just can't lean into that. Last week we saw Pat Bryant jump both Franklin and Mims in snaps and pass plays, had 7 targets as well. Didn't do much with that. Let's see what the injury is, make sure he's good to go. He's limited on Thursday. Interesting. It might have been an injury in practice. Keep an eye on that. If he is healthy at 3,400, he's a go-to punt play for sure. I'm not going to go like Franklin had big weeks and then last week got his target share cut in half. But to me, it seems like he might have done something small, and Sean Payton in his petty ways was punishing him for a week to motivate him, and then this week we'll go back to him. Like Sean Payton with his crazy ways, you can't ever look at snap share. You never know what kind of message he's trying to send or what he's trying to do. So I actually like Franklin a decent amount this week because the way that Sean Payton is erratic with this, everybody's going to be leaning into that he was wide receiver 3 last week instead of wide receiver 2 and not play him because of that. So I'm going to lean into the other side of that where I think it's just Sean Payton being Sean Payton and he's going to get the majority of targets this week, or at least number 2 in targets behind Sutton maybe, and has that big upside game and a really good matchup. So that's what I'm going to lean into, probably about 10% Franklin, which should be way above the field. And then Sutton, I'll be about 10% Sutton as well. Mims and Bryant, if Bryant plays, I really like Bryant as a pump play, and I don't mind mixing in Mims as well. Probably wouldn't play a little Ingram, but I'd be more focused on the receivers for sure. And then I'm not playing anything on the Vegas side. Bowers at 6K. I just, against this Denver defense and this Denver pass rush, I just don't see them being able to get the ball down the field. And I think there's a good chance that they just put Surtain on Bowers. So I'm not really into that matchup. 2 more games, my friends. Let's move on to the Rams and Arizona. Massive advantage for the Rams across the board. Massive advantage for the Rams across the board. Huge run game advantage as well. Arizona mismatch across the board. I think this is a week that some of the Brissett fantasy goodness ends. I think the Rams make a statement after a tough game last week and being in a dome in Arizona. I also think that McVay is very conscious of the fact that Matthew Stafford is no longer the favorite, according to Vegas, to be the MVP. I know that they are focused on winning football games, but I also know that McVay does care about those legacy things, and I think that he wants to get Stafford the MVP. So I think that it could be a big week from Stafford. So I'm very interested on the Rams side, little to no interest on the Cardinals side. So let's actually start with the Cardinals, just go through it quick. Brissett at this price, he's paid it off every week. Damn. When you look at that, it's hard to say we shouldn't play him. Yeah, we will mix him in. We'll do 5% Brissett. We're not going to go completely away from him with this consistent numbers. But I do think that this week he's likely to not get to 20 points, that this would be the week that he is in that 15 range. I expect to see Benson this week. If he doesn't play this week, he's not practicing. That would be the end of his season. We'll see. If he doesn't play, I'm not interested in this run game. Just we'll full stop there. I think it's looking like Harrison's not going to play. So if that's the case, Wilson at 5,600, we can definitely mix in the targets that he's been getting when it's just crazy target numbers. So if Harrison's out, we'll go to Wilson. If Harrison's playing, we'll have some Harrison. I probably wouldn't play much Wilson at that point. Tough breaks for Harrison. Like, this is the perfect moment for him to really be showing out, and Wilson's going to do so because of the appendix injury or appendicitis that he had, and then the heel injury last week when he was looking awesome early in the game. So unfortunate for him. Hopefully he can play, but it's trending towards him not. If he can, I'll be interested in it. But there's also that re-injury risk. I could see him wanting to push it to get into an environment, but really this should be a week that he takes off. If that's like, the Rams are a tough matchup. Get healthy for a week, Harrison, and then come out and show out against lesser opponents in future weeks. But we can lean into Wilson and his 18 targets if Harrison is out. McBride's too expensive at 8K. Just can't get there for a tight end. The lineup just doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I'll build a Jacoby and Brissett lineup or two, but at 8K, that's just too much. I want Jamar Chase at 8K. I don't want Trey McBride at 8K. All right, and now let's get to the good side, the side that seems like makes the most sense. So Stafford at 6,900, and then Puka and Devontae. Like, really, I would do single stacks, and I would mix in some double stacks as well. I don't think it's unlikely for Stafford to have a 4 or 5 touchdown game, and it's probably going to go to those two guys. I think around the goal line, they're likely to want to throw touchdowns rather than run the ball in. See what Williams' injuries is. If he's out, he was limited, so he'll likely play. But if he were out, Corum would be like a 70 to 80% play for sure at 4,600. I actually like Corum if Williams plays more out of these two because of his price. They're pretty much split in the backfield. He had 14 last week. That would be fine. Honestly, at 4,600, that would pay off just fine. But yeah, they're pretty much just splitting drives. I think that he could easily pay off that price. He could get into the end zone. I do think that they will try to throw the ball more around the goal line, but if this massive advantage that they have in the run game, like, it's not out of the realm of possibility to break one. And I think Corum actually has more upside to break off a long touchdown run than Williams does. So, like, if one of these guys got a 40-yard run, that could be a way that, Stafford doesn't have. They don't throw it in the red zone. I think they're going to throw in the red zone is what I think. But if one of them busts a big run, I think it's more likely to be Corum. So I'll probably be about 5 to 10% Corum. I think at that price, that could be a tournament winner for sure. I don't really want to do much with the tight ends, and I'm probably not going to play. It's hard to play Puka and Devontae without Matthew Stafford. You could play Devontae a little bit more, I guess. It's like Devontae's ceiling seems to be around 25, which doesn't quite 4x our salary there, but 3x is solid at that price. And Nakua hasn't had a boom game in a while. Week 4 was the last time he had one. I don't know if they get pushed enough for him to get 40. Maybe, though. Again, I do think that the legacy stuff matters and that they are kind of pursuing Stafford getting MVP. So they might lean into it. It's in LA too. Or actually, where is this? I think this is in Arizona. So this is another weather-controlled game. So I like lean into that for sure. There's a lot of reasons why I could see Stafford and the Rams having a big day. And I like Corum the more we talk about that as well. All right, last game. This should be a great real-life game. I don't know that it's going to be a great DFS game for us, but the Packers and the Bears looks like a solid advantage for Green Bay across the board, but Chicago has played better in recent weeks, so I think that these grades are a little bit skewed towards Chicago's failings early on in the year. So I don't want to get too excited about the matchup advantage that we're seeing because I do think it's a little bit more neutral than what this is showing. That being said, Green Bay is likely getting all their receivers back. It sounds like they'll probably have Reed, Wicks, and Golden, so who knows what the hell they're going to do at receiver. As far as the rotation has been pretty crazy. They were all limited, so it was nice when we just knew that it was Watson, Dobbs, and Wicks. Had a little bit of Wicks on Thanksgiving. Unfortunately, every Wicks lineup I had also had Amon-Ra St. Brown in it, so that was a bummer. But obviously, Wicks had the big game last week, but a lot of question marks in this. I like Watson. I like Dobbs. Then the rest of this gets kind of ugly. But these two guys, you feel like you can count on their snap percentage being up. Reed, Golden, Wicks, all those guys, it's going to be hard to see who's going to be on the field. So I would lean more Watson and Dobbs in this. I don't want to mess with tight end. This definitely could be a Josh Jacobs game. Questionable, but he's been banged up year-round. But we talked about it earlier. This time of year, these teams lean into their studs and the guys that they can rely on. They know they can count on Jacobs in these big moments. I feel like he's going to get the rock a lot. It's in Green Bay. It's supposed to be cold conditions. I don't think it'll really impact much offensively. Might be a little bit less of a pass game, but the Packers have leaned into the run game year-round. So Jacobs, to me, is really solid. Probably be around 15 to 20% Jacobs this week. All right, let's go to the Chicago side. I'm going to play a few Caleb Williams game stacks. I don't think it's likely he has a big game. I think what they are going to do is continue to do what they've done throughout recent weeks, and that's just pound the rock with the run game and then have Caleb make a few key plays here and there. And if they get behind, then they'll rely on Caleb. So we could see some fourth quarter magic from Williams, which is what the upside that I want to lean into. But if they just play a game that they are winning throughout, I think that they're just going to be primarily dinking and dunking and running the football aggressively. I like both Swift and Monungai. The split makes it a little hard, but I would lean. I think Swift has a higher likelihood of breaking a big one, and this is their best matchup advantage is in the run game. When we go look at the matchup here on the Chicago side, they actually have a pretty big advantage in the run game. So all of that to me matches up with what I think they're likely to lean into, which is just trying to run the football. If it goes according to Chicago's plan, I think that these guys probably have 40 carries between them, somewhere in that ballpark, 35 to 40 carries, and Caleb Williams drops back around 20 times. Where that shifts is if they get behind and in the third quarter, they have to abandon the run game a little bit and play catch up. That's the scenario in which I want to play. The scenarios where Caleb Williams goes Superman, which we've seen a little bit in the past, and then we can match him up with Odunze, Moore, Burden. And I really like Loveland in that type of scenario to have a big play here or there. So all these guys are playable. None of them are core plays for me by any means because I don't think that they're going to rely on them. I think they're going to rely on the run game, but there is a game scenario where they go off. I'm primarily just going to build those with Williams, though, so I won't really have them sprinkled in much across my player pool. Loveland, I think, has the potential to score a touchdown in both game scripts, so I would go into him a little bit more at his price, maybe 5 to 10%-ish Loveland there. So yeah, that game I don't love, but I do think there's scenarios where I think there's probably players coming out of this game. I think there's likely a running back or two that comes out of this game, or there's scenarios where their comeback mode was successful for one team or the other, and quarterback plus receivers came along. So I want to play both of those scenarios with Love and Williams. I think it's more likely on the Love side, though, because I think it's likely that Chicago does have success running the ball, has long sustained drives, and actually do get out to a lead. And then I could see the Packers then finally being forced to go into their pass game, which they do have a good advantage in, and you can see Jordan Love having success. So those are the likely scenarios I see playing out there. All right, let's quickly run through our player pool. I talked through a lot of it, so I don't have to go too in-depth in it. But my core plays at quarterback, Josh Allen, Matthew Stafford, Joe Burrow, Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, and Jordan Love. Jaden Daniels will be my highest owned in this range. Probably be around 30% Jaden Daniels, and then it'd be pretty evenly sprinkled across the rest, around 10 to 15% for the rest of the guys. Guys that I want to mix in, Sam Darnold, Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Tyrod, and J.J. McCarthy. No more than 8% for any of these guys, most of them closer to 5%. And guys that I'll build in a couple lineups with, Lamar, Baker, Jacoby, and Caleb. I need to move over Daniel Jones. The more we talk through it, I do want to build a few lineups with him. So we'll move him into my 4 or 5 lineups group. Not playing Rodgers or Cam Ward. If Daniels doesn't play, I definitely would be playing Mariota, but I really love Daniels if he plays. I want to play Shedeur, but I just don't see it being a tournament-winning score. I feel like this week there is going to be some 35 to 40-point scores at quarterback, and I think it's most likely to be coming from this group. I don't think Shedeur is capable of that. I do think he could score 20, but this week I don't think it's possible to really win. I think you're going to need a 35 to 40-point game because I think one of these guys is going to do it. I'm going to focus my efforts primarily in that grouping. So guys that I think could get to 15 to 20 that some weeks could work. This week I'm just not going to play them. All right, our running back, it's James Cook, and then it's everybody else. The guys that it's really hard to narrow down for me this week at running back. I really like all these guys to have some potential. So it's pretty much going to be 70-80% Cook. And then the next grouping would be Achane, Bucky, Jacobs. That would be the next group there. So I'm actually going to move this around a little bit. The more we talk through this, the more I feel like I have a little bit more clarity on it. Then Taylor, Robinson, Henry, that group be more over here into like the 10%-ish range. But then Brown, Harvey, Corum, we get more into the 15% range with those guys. So these guys, I want to be 5 to 10% with all of them. So we got Achane, Bucky Irving, Josh Jacobs, Chase Brown, RJ Harvey, and Blake Corum as my secondary core plays behind Cook, somewhere in the range of 15 to 25% for that group. And then this next group, somewhere around 5 to 15%, DeAndre Swift, Kyle Monangai, Bashal Tutin, Travis Etienne, Breece Hall, Quinshon Judkins, Kyron Williams, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, and Derrick Henry. I do actually want to move over Breece Hall the more we talked about that. I know I'm making a lot of adjustments here. But the more we talk through it in the game-by-game breakdown, it does just the game scenarios feels more likely that Hall could hit a ceiling this week in comparison to other weeks. So we'll go ahead and move him over. The field's really on Genty based on volume, but against that Broncos defense, I just don't see it. I don't think they're going to move the ball really well at all this week. So missing out on him, missing out on Mason and Jones. That might be a mistake. Those might be guys I need to mix in, but there are just so many guys that I have confidence in this week that I had to X out some guys. So Mason and Jones could be some of those mistakes, and Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet. Just because of the split, I think it's unlikely that they're a tournament-winning score. I think it's most likely that the grouping that has the tournament-winning score is coming out of this whole group here, and more likely for these first two. But it's such a decent chance this week that this big group could do it that I'm a lot more spread out at running back than I normally am. But I'll be lasered in on Cook. Most of my lineups are going to start with Cook, and then we'll branch off from there. All right, let's move over to wide receiver. I'm assuming that London's not playing. I put him down here. If he is playing, he would be in my core plays. But my real cores are Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Jacoby Myers, Terry McLaurin, Christian Watson, Alec Pierce, and Pat Bryant. Expect all of them to play. On the guys that I want to mix in, somewhere around 10%. These guys will be 20% plus probably for all of these guys. These guys will be somewhere between 5 to 20% owned. That's Justin Jefferson, Chris Olave, Cortland Sutton, Deebo Samuel, Troy Franklin, Romeo Doubs, Jordan Addison, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle, and Michael Wilson. If Wilson doesn't play, sorry, not Wilson. Where'd he go? Harrison Jr. Sorry, lost it there for a second. But if Harrison Jr. doesn't play, I would probably move Wilson over to my core plays, get around 20% Wilson, just because of the volume he's been getting at that price. He's very likely to pay it off. Everybody else, I'm primarily just playing with their quarterbacks in stacks. These are the guys that I'm playing one-offs in lineups, and I think have the most 4X upside and could do it in environments where they don't necessarily bring their quarterback along with them. At tight end, we got Ertz, Kincaid, Strange, and Fannin as my core plays. Also have Warren in there, probably be about 10% Tyler Warren, somewhere in that ballpark. Guys to consider, Waller is one that we could probably mix in a little bit. Most of these guys I'd just be mixing in with their quarterbacks, though. These would be the guys would be playing without their quarterbacks. Defense, would love to get to the Browns, followed by the Broncos, but it's going to be hard to get there. I'd lean into the Steelers quite a bit, and if I have to, I'll use the Raiders. I just think in the punt defenses, the Raiders, with Max Crosby, you have the opportunity to get sacks, and with Bo Nix playing down to his competition previously, I just think that there's a decent chance that they pay off their price. Let's look and see what they did against the Broncos the first time they played. I think they had they put up a 10 spot against the Broncos in that game, actually. That was in Denver, so I could see them being okay. Another thing about that Denver game, that's also in a dome, so that's another one of those environments that we want to target this week with weather kind of being a factor across the board. So we got Arizona, Denver, Vegas, as well as Seattle's in Atlanta. So we got that game environment, and then we got Washington and Minnesota as other games to target there. All right, let's build a lineup and get out of here, my friends. At quarterback, where do we want to go? Well, let's go with our Jaden Daniels lineup to get it started. And then we will mix in one of his pass catchers. Let's go with McLaurin. There, we'll go ahead and plug in James Cook. So he's going to be our go-to guy there. So offenses that I would love to get pieces of. Let's just go through that. We've already got Washington. We'll probably want a little bit of Minnesota there, but really want to get Cincinnati. We've already got Buffalo and Cook. We want to get to Denver. We want to get to the Rams. Yeah, that's really the range. So at running back, probably don't want to do two running backs out of that game, so don't want to get to Brown. Running back might be where I go out of this range. Let's go get, let's just take, we'll come back to running back. Let's look at wide receiver. So I do want to get a comeback of either Chase or Higgins. Let's go with Higgins here, go more of a middling price. So Cook and Higgins. That being said, though, Chase in these environments with Burrow back. Give me Chase. Can we get to, let's just try if we can do Chase and Higgins. Leaves us 4,100. Get a defense in there. Would love to get to the Browns, but I don't know that we can do that. Let's we'll go ahead and take off these. We could put the Browns in there just to see what it does. We can go punt tight ends. Let's go with Brendan Strange. 3,900. Gives us 2 at 4,500. So yeah, let's go ahead and do a quorum lineup here. Kind of going against the Matthew Stafford, just getting a few touchdowns. I mean, he could still throw 4 touchdowns, and Quorum gets 1 touchdown and pays off this price if he hits that 100-yard bonus, which I think is possible in this game. So yeah, we got Quorum in there at RB2. Now what do we got at flex? Go Kincaid. We'll assume that Kincaid is playing. So we got our core stack of Daniels and Terry McLaurin. Then we got a game going off in Cincinnati. We got 4 players out of that game. We got Cook, Chase, Higgins, and Kincaid. Back and forth game that hits the over. These are the 4 pieces that you need out of that game. Then Blake Corum and Rams just shellacking of Arizona has 15 carries for 120 yards and a touchdown and massively pays off his price. And then Brendan Strange is reliable for Trevor Lawrence, has a solid day, gets a 20 spot, 5 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown. Gets us in there. And then Dalton Kincaid, we already talked about that game, but there's 7 touchdowns scored in that game, and 6 of them come from these four guys. And the Browns just dominate Tennessee. Myles Garrett gets the sack record. They get a pick 6. Browns have a big game. So there it is. There's $1 million, my friends. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. As always, if you want the spreadsheets, shoot me an email at millymakermaniac@gmail.com, and I'm happy to send those over to y'all. We got some things coming in the future. We'll have a website and stuff up in future weeks. We'll definitely have a lot of stuff built out for the 2026 season, but I'm going to start getting a good chunk of stuff built out before the end of the year. Just a lot of a learning curve beyond just the football stuff, but learning on website design and how I can have some interactive things that are available for subscribers so I can make adjustments throughout the week. So building out some models and things along those lines for y'all, but just a big learning curve. So it's taken me a while to do that. So they'll definitely be around in 2026, but I'm hoping to have a good chunk of stuff for y'all before the end of this season as well. Follow along, hit that subscribe button, you can comment, tell me in the comments who is the slate breaker. If you tell me it's a slate breaker, I promise I'll build at least one lineup with that guy because I believe in y'all. So go ahead and put those in the comments and let's win $1 million this week. Here's the first shot at that Millie. Good luck, my friends. I will see you all on Monday for the recap. Have a great weekend and good luck in week 14.